All right, welcome everybody into another episode of the Big Douglas Show. The Super Monday crew is here. You know that George Carmine, Adam Maniba, as always, and our special guest today is Al Galdi. Al, it's a misery Monday, but maybe there's a couple things that we can be happy about from the game yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, you could have had me on a better day, but yeah, it is nice to be with you guys. There is a lot to talk about, that's for sure.
There is. I asked each one of you to think about a word that sums up the game yesterday. Each of you are writers and are well versed in words, so I figured this was a great opportunity to let you use your repertoire a little bit. I'll start. Mine is recalibrate. I you know the we got excited with the two wins. We got excited with the rookie quarterback. So much has got to be put on the rookie quarterback because the team has to win this year that I feel like we're looking at a team that is 3 years into the same quarterback and it's go time. It's not. It's a quarterback that's 4 games in, and teams are just starting to get tape on him. That was interesting that the Bills player said, we knew he was going to be a tick late on third down. We were waiting for it. So I think recalibrate our expectations for a year with what essentially is a rookie quarterback. Al, what word did you come up with for today?
Yeah, I'd say disappointing. I think you could look at this in a lot of ways. What you just said, I think, makes total sense. But I think I also look at it as for a second time in 3 years, you have this week 3 game against Buffalo. It's hyped up as a measuring stick game by your head coach, who's also in charge of player personnel and now is in his 4th year as your head coach. And you get smashed once again. Like, it wasn't close. This was tied for the 3rd worst home loss for Washington since 1950. This was not, a loss on a last second field goal. This wasn't even a loss by, a couple of touchdowns. This was a smash job. And that was disappointing. You'd like to think in year 4 of a program with whatever else has gone down. And we know that there have been a lot of extenuating circumstances, but boy, you'd like to think in year 4 of a program in a so-called measuring stick game, you'd show for yourself better than that. Now, look, to be fair to Ron, I mean, he has had wins over good teams during his time as Washington head coach. It's not like in every game against a good team, his team has gotten worked. Like, no, they've had some big wins over good teams, but it's just kind of funny to me how, like, what happened 2 years ago is exactly what ended up happening here. Week 3, same opponent, same verbiage, measuring stick, and essentially the same result. In fact, if anything, this was worse because this was at home and this was a 34-point loss. So, I was just disappointed. I wasn't sure if they were going to win, but I thought it would at least be competitive, and it really wasn't.
Yeah, I agree. We'll wait till Doug gets back. But to kind of add on to that, I think Doc Walker said it best. We all expected a pretty competitive game. We thought the game was going to be, it would be expected for Buffalo to win. They've been a winning team for years now, right? But I think just the fact that they lost by this much, we didn't think they were capable of losing this much. So that was a shocker to us. Adam, what do you think? What's the word that came to mind for you?
I'll go on the half full mentality that, patience, because I think, a lot of young quarterbacks, especially, guys that are trying to get to be franchise quarterbacks, they're going to have that stinker of a game. I'm hoping that we're not going to see another one like this, but I really do think that this is going to be probably one of his worst career performances. And again, I said it on Twitter, it's all about how he bounces back and how the coaches respond, because it's crazy how fans from 1 week to this week are, they're ready to get rid of him and tank the year for, Caleb Williams. So I think patience, because again, I think EB, he's still learning his way. And of course, Sam Howell, this is his, only a couple games into his career. So again, I just think you need to be patient with him. But again, it didn't feel good the way that, I thought it'd be a lot more competitive the way it went down. But I think, with a new system, from everyone I talked to, EB's, system, it's not easy. It is hard to learn. And you could see he's just not reading the field the way he needs to, especially, near the red zone. There was just opportunities that were just left out there. So just got to have patience with him at this point.
It was 10 rushes for 70 yards for Robinson the other day, Galdi. Why is it that they refused to run the ball in the second half when it was working so well in the first half?
Relatively close.
George, did you notice that though? I mean, it was glaring. They were effective running the ball, and they just, I don't know why they refused to get to it. Galdi, we got you back.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, so I'm probably in the minority on this. I did not think that them not running more was that big of a problem. Now, look, in hindsight, you look at it, the passing game was not working. Robinson averaged 70 yards per carry. Like, yeah, giving him a few more carries would have made more sense. But I thought that one of the real bright spots of the first two games was Eric Bieniemy's aggressive, modern, pass-heavy play calling, especially in these first halves. That's how a lot of good teams do it. That is the way of the modern NFL. So when it works, I don't think it's right to praise him. And then when it doesn't work, you say, well, geez, what the heck were you thinking? Like he was trying to do what had worked in previous games. Now, specific to this game, that may have been the way to go with a few more runs. But generally speaking, I do like the way that Eric Bieniemy is calling these games. And I thought it was really interesting. Ron Rivera, in his day after the game press conference on Monday afternoon, essentially said that one of the goals of this season is to develop Sam Howell. Like he came out and said it in a way that he really had not said it before. And so I think that does put a different frame on the Eric Bieniemy play calling, because I don't think the team is necessarily just calling plays for each specific game. I think there is a bigger picture mindset of we're going to call a lot of passes because this is going to potentially expedite and expand the growth of Sam Howell. And Ron on Monday afternoon talked about how we want to get Sam to where we think he can be. And once we get there, we think, this team can be really good. And so I think that's a lot of what's happening here. I think it's not just about each game and each opponent and each matchup. I think there is a larger picture in mind of this team really trying to develop Sam Howell. And I can't remember the last time a head coach for Washington was that open about something like this, but I actually liked hearing Ron say that on Monday afternoon. I think it makes sense in the bigger picture. Now, it's kind of odd for a guy who we all think is coaching for his job to be talking like that, but maybe that's how he keeps his job, by the team doing a good job of developing Sam Howell.
It's the only way he keeps his job. Now, you mentioned EB, George. I was kind of surprised. To my count, they ran 3 screenplays.
Yeah.
They killed Denver the week before, and it was one of my keys to the game that I mentioned before the last week was we got to get good at the screens. They were effective at the screens. They didn't run them. I thought that was surprising.
It was surprising. So I rewatched the game this afternoon, just kind of preparing for the show. And I was just like, my word was pressure. And I felt like there was a lot of pressure on Sam Howell in regard to the defensive line from the Buffalo Bills. I felt there wasn't a lot of pressure from our defensive line to basically, generate pressure on Josh Allen. And then finally, I felt like there's pressure on Eric Bieniemy for whatever reason to keep up and try to score with the Buffalo Bill offense for whatever reason, right? I was watching the game and going into half, it was about, I think it was 10-0. It was on 4th down. And I kind of like what Al said. I like the fact that we are that progressive offense. We're trying to score. We're trying to get the EPA up. But, at that point, if we had scored a field goal and it was 10-3 and it was a pretty competitive game, we could have slowed the game down a little bit. I think Buffalo has more of an explosive offense to compete. Going into the game, it was 13-0 late in the second quarter. We had the ball, and then Sam Howell throws an interception there. I think just recalibrating and slowing things down, like running the ball, throwing some screens, it could have dictated the pace of the game. The 37-3 score is not indicative of what the game looked like. We just lost control in the fourth quarter, and I feel like with the screen game, Doug, as you alluded to, like a lot of the pass rush is kind of like setting up for next time, right? Defensive ends blitzing on the tackles and kind of, I'm going to do a spin move this time. And then 2 plays later, I'm going to do a rip move, just kind of work it around. When you're doing screenplays, you kind of disrupt the chemistry of the defensive line blitzing. You can kind of take advantage of that. You can run against that. So I do wish there was more diversity. I feel like they were trying to go for big chunk plays. And with the pressure that Buffalo was bringing, it wasn't really working yesterday.
Yeah, they throw that big pass to Cole Turner. And the juice is going. It seems counterintuitive, but I might have liked to come down and call it a run play just to slow things down, because I believe it's after that play you get 2 straight penalties and then the interception. And that's the other thing that the young quarterbacks got to learn is there are certain, like not all sacks are the same, right? Like you can't take a sack and then get to 3rd and long. You can't take another one that then pushes you out of field goal range. It's frustrating. Al, we're going to have to live with those this year because that's what kind of season it's going to be, right?
Yeah, and what you hope for is that you get in-season improvement and in-season growth. We're 3 games into a 17-game March. And so what I've always hoped for, and I think what everyone hopes for, is that the Sam Howell of September is different than the Sam Howell of October, who is different from the Sam Howell of November. Look, what happened against the Bills was bad, man. We have seen 4 pick games. We have seen 9 sack games. To see those 2 things in the same game, that's not something we've seen often, if at all. 4 picks and 9 sacks taken. It's one of the worst games I've seen a Washington quarterback have. But Absolutely. You stick with Sam. Absolutely. You continue to ride this out. He has talent. I think he has a great attitude about things. And, we just saw him play really well in the week 2 win at the Broncos. So the notion of him bouncing back from this and playing well, I don't think is that far-fetched. Obviously, what you want to avoid is what we saw on Sunday against Buffalo becoming the norm. And, that would be sort of the abyss that you don't want to fall into here. But I don't know. I don't think it will be. I think he's going to be all right. I don't look at him and say to myself, like, this guy's got very little chance of working out. I actually think there's a decent shot that he's going to turn out to be a pretty good NFL quarterback, maybe even more than that. But, it takes some time to get there. By the way, I think it's so funny how this stuff works out. So Monday here, right, is September 25th. It was 9 years ago to the day that Kirk Cousins threw 4 picks in a Thursday night blowout loss to the Giants.
Great stat.
And that was a horrible night, right? That was one of those blowout losses, primetime game at home, right? We've seen so many of those over the years. 2014. Well, what happened with Kirk the next 3 years, right? Wherever you stand on Kirk, like, he ended up being a good quarterback for this team over 3 seasons. I think Sam could do that. And so, a bad game in September doesn't necessarily dictate anything for what you're going to end up being as an NFL quarterback.
The other thing, Adam, I found fascinating on Sunday was, both of these defenses kind of want to do the same thing. And one of my keys before that Denver game was it'd be nice to see some more design blitzes. And they did that. It felt like in this game, they did a ton of them and they weren't getting home. And Buffalo was able to send 4 and drop 7, and it really affected Sam. And I wonder, why they continued from Washington sending so many design blitzes when they just weren't getting home. Maybe they should have stuck with the rush 4, drop 7 approach. What were your thoughts on all the blitzing on Sunday, Adam?
I think they had opportunities. I think, there was a big one with Cam Curl missed on Allen. There's a couple of those. And I think as coaches, you're looking at it as, they were there. They just, they didn't square up. They missed the tackle. So I think they just looked at that as missed opportunities, not necessarily that it wasn't working. But yeah, I like to see them mix it up a little more. But I think Daron Payne, although he played, I think he was definitely feeling that ankle because, there was on a couple plays, he did look good, but he just wasn't looking like the week before. And I think it's really indicative of how important he is to this front line. So I do think that was a factor. But yeah, I think it's good to see them being creative. But, best case scenario for them is if they can just rush their, front 4 and even, go that 5 set. That's their best way to defend right now because, that's a lot what Buffalo did was just rush 4 and, sit in coverage. So I think a lot of teams, that's their goal to get to that point. But I think it's good to see them mix it up. But yeah, they just can't miss these kind of tackles,
George, you were at the game. What was it like on Sunday?
I mean, it was a fun game at first.
Nasty.
It was pretty nasty. So second week in a row was definitely a rating game. It was good energy. I think the fans came ready to cheer. They're really excited. It's just kind of fun. I've been a season ticket holder for a couple of years now. The energy level definitely has gone up. The first quarter was pretty competitive. I think it was a 3-0 at the end of the first quarter, something maybe even 10-0. It was a close game, and our defensive cheers were going crazy on third down. I'm going to be completely honest with you because I'm always going to be honest. It was 50-50 split between Buffalo fans and Commanders fans. Half the field was completely blue. You saw it going into the game. But, you can't knock that. Buffalo Bills travel. They're a really historic fan base. They've been following for years. It was a good time. It was good energy, but I feel like there was some missed opportunities. People were getting upset, especially like late in the game. People were definitely like, fourth quarter when they were down by 20, 25, like, I'm going to beat traffic. And people started to kind of filter out. So it was kind of sad to see there, but that's honest to goodness truth.
Al, it was 16-0, like halfway, 3/4 of the way through the fourth quarter. It's one of the weirder games that I've ever watched. I mean, you give up a turnover, your chance of winning, I think it's like 65, goes down to minus 65. 2 is like 78%. 4 is 0. And yet, they were, oddly enough, I don't know if they were ever in that game, but they were in that game 16-0 in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I don't think the score reflected how you felt about the game. It didn't feel 16-0. It felt like, 30-0. And then it's kind of funny how things sort of even out and the score ended up reflecting, I think, how a lot of us felt about that game. But no doubt, I mean, they lost the turnover battle 5-1, so that they didn't lose. You don't lose by 100 points. Like that's almost a minor miracle when you lose a turnover battle like that, 5-1, including one of the turnovers being a pick six. So Yeah, that's they're not at a point yet at which they can have, say, a game in which they commit 3 turnovers or more and expect to win. Like, you got to be like almost elite offensively to do that. They're certainly not at that point. So yeah, it's going to be on how Sam bounces back from this. I would be surprised if he doesn't bounce back well. But I think there's a lot of work to do here. I mean, the pace at which this team is giving up sacks cannot continue. 19 sacks over 3 games is unacceptable. You can't have that. Like, something has got to give in that regard. And, I think at this point we all kind of get the picture. Like, a lot of that is on Sam. The majority of it probably is on Sam, but it's not all on Sam. The offensive line can be better. I think Eric Bieniemy can do a better job, certainly, of scheming away from the pressure. I'd like to see more moving pockets. You guys talked about the screens. I think that's a very good point. I mean, all week we heard about, the revamped screen game, the revitalized screen game. We barely saw screens on Sunday. So I think this is a shared responsibility. And, hopefully we see a better game plan come Sunday. But we know, it's not going to get much easier, right? I mean, you're facing a team in the Eagles that has wrecked Washington quarterbacks previously. So this is going to be a stiff test.
At home too, or on the road to Philly will definitely not be easy. Alice, interesting your opinion on this. I talk to fans all the time that say the offensive line is a problem and they refuse to address it. And while it's easy to say that, I'd suggest that they spent their 2 quote unquote big free agent signings this year on offensive linemen, the center and the right tackle. They spent their 3rd and 4th round draft picks this year on offensive linemen. So although you may not be excited about those players, to say that they haven't spent their resources on the offensive line, they have.
Well, I think the mistake that people make is equating money with talent or where you're taken in a draft with talent, when the truth is, certainly with offensive linemen, you can find good ones later in drafts. You can find good ones on the cheap in free agency. This regime has done that. When you look at Cornelius Lucas and Wes Schweitzer, Charles Leno, like this team has gotten good production from on the cheap offensive linemen in veteran free agency. The question would be this: were the right guys picked? Because clearly last year, the right guys were not picked when you talk about Trey Turner and Andrew Norwell. So when you look at this year and Nick Gates and Andrew Wiley were the right guys picked, we'll see. Time will tell. I think assessing offensive line play via the naked eye, via just watching the game initially on a Sunday afternoon, is one of the most dangerous things you can do, because it's almost like this unknowable thing, the offensive line in real time, truly determining whether the offensive line is playing well or not. Like, obviously, if you're dominating, yes, the offensive line is playing well, but there's a lot of nuance to this. There's a lot to this that we don't know. So you always have to sort of wait on the game to happen. You get some of the advanced numbers that come out. You get people who understand X's and O's talking about what they saw. And then you can really get your arms around whether the offensive line was an issue or not. I don't think the offensive line has been the train wreck that some people make it out to be. But yes, it can be better. And I think the concern with the line has always been this: the realistic best case scenario for this season probably is the offensive line being decent. You always want that ceiling to not be decent. You want the ceiling to be excellence. And I think that's kind of the problem here. Like, even if everyone along the line from left to right works out, you're still probably looking at a realistic best case scenario under which the offensive line is like middle of the pack in the NFL. Now, that would be a big improvement from last season. But, bigger picture, right? Like, you don't want middle of the pack. You want like top 10, top 5. And I don't think they have that kind of talent on the line to where they could realistically be at that level.
Georgia is one of the youngest teams in the league. Like, are we overhyping them considering how young they are? It feels like we're just getting into the groove right now, but we don't have time.
It's a weird dynamic. We've been talking about it all off season. This is a pretty well-constructed roster, and there is some talent on the roster as well. We talked about the defensive backs and the safeties being on the rise and potentially being as on par with the defensive line and being a strength of the team. We have a young quarterback who's 23 years old. He's only played four games so far in the pro leagues, in the NFL. Just like Al mentioned, just like Adam mentioned, we all mentioned, we like the potential growth that he has and the potential ability that he has. He has functional mobility. He can create. He has poise. He has the arm talent. My concern with him is I just want to make sure he doesn't get rattled. I think he's going to get hit a lot. He's been sacked 19 times. Now, there's been much more pressures and hitting on the quarterback, but the fact that he needs to protect himself, I'm definitely worried about that long term. Brian Robinson's still on a rookie deal. Cole Turner's still rising up. It is a weird dynamic in DC because we have a team that's on the rise with a veteran coaching staff that's kind of in limbo. We don't really know what's going to happen with them next. I think patience is going to be the most important thing. I think a lot of people that really do follow football and follow the game know that what happened with Sam Howell isn't something that happens every week. Like realistically, that's probably the worst game he's had in his career. I've looked at his college stats. I'm sure it's, he hasn't had a game like that, probably not in high school either. So this is a game he's going to bounce back with. We just have to be measured. I think it's a marathon, as kind of Al alluded to before. I like to think about it as like a 17-chapter book, right? We're on chapter 3. It was a bad chapter, right? Next chapter, we're playing the Eagles. They're a pretty good team. Even if we do show growth and play better and be more focused, which I do expect for us to be, are we going to win the game? I don't know. We're playing the defending NFC champs. We can't expect to win the game per se, right? So just measured growth week by week, see how it goes, and just gotta be patient. See how that. We just gotta see how it goes.
Adam, when we talked about the interesting part about it being, at least within reach still in the fourth quarter, is this what if you're Ron Rivera, what do you say when you go in the locker room? Is this one of those where you throw the tape out and say, hey, listen, there were opportunities out there. We didn't take them. We're moving on, or like, what is the mood if you're Ron Rivera after a game like that? In a game where, most people didn't have you winning anyway, and you sort of kind of competed through 3 quarters?
If I'm him, I think you got to lay it down a little bit, because it wasn't just one side of the ball. It was a lot of guys not on assignments, missed tackles, just again, taking bad sacks. I think he needs to turn it up now. I think you take that game as a learning experience, but, from the head coaching point of view, and, Eric Bieniemy, Jack Del Rio, I think they really need to turn it up. Whatever they're doing right now. Yeah, a lot of people didn't see them winning that game, but that was embarrassing. I didn't think they'd win either, but I had that game, within a touchdown or so. So I think to get beat down that bad, we can put a lot on Sam Howell. There was a lot of situations where he either should have thrown it away or, just made a better decision. But, like Al said, love to see them move the pocket. Really, we hear EB talking about playing to his players' strengths and, adapting. So that's where my faith comes in, compared to, days of old, like Turner and other guys. I think that they're really going to mold what they do well. They talk to Sam Howell and, pregame when they get all the play charts ready. Him and EB sit together and he tells them what he likes to run best. And they kind of break that down from A to Z. So, I'll be curious to see how that goes. Maybe they're going to give him the ability to do, more pre-snap audibles. Maybe they'll feel more comfortable with him doing things like that. But, we are seeing, pre-snap motion, stuff like that. But I would like to see a lot more misdirection, pre-snap, misdirection, things like that to really just kind of get the defense confused. But when you play against a team like Buffalo and the coaching staff they have, there's not much they haven't seen. So, it was just really one of those situations where it's not just on the players, it's on the coaches too, because they need to adjust. So it's just taking one of these lumps and just, moving forward. But, if I'm in them, I'm really hoping that they have an intense practice this week to go against Philadelphia, because I don't think it's, throw it out the window. I think it's every second of that game is a learning experience.
Al Soundbite Ron was back today, said he thought maybe the players had gotten a little rattled after Allen made a couple big runs in the first quarter. It's not necessarily that it's not true, but again, it's odd to hear the head such things.
Yeah, I was a little surprised by that. It was interesting. I mean, Ron was a defiant Ron on Monday afternoon. He was a curse word Ron. He dropped it.
He gave this one a lot.
That was interesting. Yeah. But, look, I'm not that worried about the defense. I think defense in the current NFL, I think in a lot of ways you are at the mercy of the quarterback you're facing, and you can be a really good defense and you can still get worked. You can do a lot of things well and you can still get got. And that's what happened to the Commanders defense. I believe in the Commanders defense. I just think in the modern NFL, it's very hard to win with defense. Like, you have to have offense. The league has changed in that regard. So when you face good quarterbacks, you're going to give stuff up and you got to be able to score points. That's part of why I didn't mind the team throwing so much in the first half on Sunday. It just didn't work. Okay. I mean, there's no two ways about it. So, this really was a humbling day. The offense got humbled big time. The coaching staff got humbled. The defense got humbled. I mean, the defense was far from perfect. Special teams gave up a big punt return. It was good to see the cheese man with a nice snap on the Joey Slye field goal. So that was good. But I mean, this is something that brings you back down to earth. But I think the good news, and Ron said this on Monday, and it is kind of a reassuring thing, 2-1. I think we all would have signed up for 2-1. And let's be honest, even if they lose to Philly, you got Chicago on a Thursday night. Now, I don't want to assume any game is a win, right? But come on, you look at the Bears right now, like we should be able to beat the Bears. 3-2 through 5 games. I think we all would have signed up for that going into this season.
100%.
It's literally what I signed up for when we did our preseason record predictions. Where I gave them way too many wins to begin with. That's the odd thing. Is the Bills game is not a game that we expected to win. I don't think most of us that have interesting thing. I looked up Josh Allen rookie stats real quick. 67.9 QBR, 2,074 yards, 10 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions. Rookie quarterbacks are rookie quarterbacks. It takes them time to figure out the game. You can tell that in moments the game's a little too fast for Hal. I think that will come to him. And again, that's the beauty of this is tape, right? For Buffalo players to sit to watch that he's hitting that ball, he's patting it one too many times at the end. That is important stuff to be able to see. And I think, Al, you make a great point. If we can get to 3-2, we would have all signed up for that before the season started. Let's wrap up with this. We'll go around the horn here, and I'm curious. One thing that you can think of that we'll have to clean up before Philadelphia. George, let's start with you.
One thing to clean up. I'd say. I mean, it's got to be just getting rid of the ball quickly, right? I think it's going to be the operation, because it's whether it's the offensive line blocking or whether it's Sam Howell releasing the ball after a third step.
This D line's better than anything we've seen yet, and that Bills D line was pretty good.
It was pretty good, and I think Washington needs to counteract. Like, I could easily go operation with the offensive line. I could easily go with Eric Bieniemy kind of coaching and helping Sam Howell make it easier for him as well. We just need to get rid of the ball quicker. Like, long story short, get rid of the ball quick. That's going to negate the defensive line pass rush. It's going to keep us in positive game script. I think I don't have a stat in front of me, but I think it was like our average third down goal to go was either 9.4 or 10.1. It was roughly it was a pretty much a full slate going into our third down operation. So we just need to be ahead of the sticks. We need to get rid of the ball quickly in order to compete. And being in a positive game script controls the clock, and we can also keep Philadelphia off the field because their offense is pretty explosive as well. So that's what I'm looking for.
Adam, what about you?
I want to see more tempo. I think against a team like Philadelphia, even if they just, bring 4, they're going to be creative with their wide formation. I want to see a lot of tempo. And I think, a lot of people might be like, well, with Sam Howell, is that the best way to go? I think with him, when you see him run that style, I think that's when he's the most comfortable. That's when he makes quicker decisions. So that's what I want to see. So I think it's just really adjusting to how the offense was running, maybe, just not too many plays where he's holding the ball so long. I just think if they run more tempo, run more quick game, stuff like that, I think that's the kind of stuff that can, just maybe get going, not necessarily win them games, but I think against Philadelphia, maybe if they can start off fast like that, I think that's the way to go.
Before we get to yours, Al, I'm just curious because we hadn't had a chance to talk about it before the season started. Where were you on this team and some of your expectations?
Yeah, I mean, I said 10-7, in part because I really want that to be the case. But, I don't think this is a bad team. I think there's talent on this team. I think that it came down to 2 things, which are arguably the 2 most important things, but the quarterback and the offensive line. And if those things were just decent this year, then I very much could see the team winning 10 games. I mean, the team went 7-10 last season with horrendous offensive line play and horrendous quarterback play from a statistical standpoint. There were some good games, and we don't have to reignite the Taylor Heineke debate, but if you look at things objectively, bottom 5th of the NFL in terms of both O-line play and quarterback play, and you still went 7-10. So if those things can just be upgraded to being, again, like middle of the pack, why can't this team win 10 games? So that's where I was at, and 3-2 would put you on a course to potentially getting to 10 wins. So hopefully that's the case, but we all know, man, these seasons, they take us in like 50 different directions we never anticipated. So, we are just beginning this wild ride.
I agree.
So through 3 games, are you still on the uptick? Are you still hopeful on the season?
I am, because what I am expecting and, also hoping for is that, like I said earlier, the Sam Howell of October, November, December is better than the Sam Howell of September. Like, I think that's a big thing here, is that, this guy, as the season goes on, is going to demonstrate improvement. If you remember, going back to Kirk, 2015, 2016, he got a lot better as those seasons went on. This gets kind of forgotten. He did not get off to very good starts in either season. And yet by the end of the season, the guy was rolling. And I think something like that could happen with Sam, to where it really starts to click and this team really starts to pick up steam. Like my biggest concern, obviously, I don't want him getting hurt. Like, I think that would be so bad for this team for so many reasons. Of like, he suffers an injury and he's out for like 5 weeks, it just derails everything. So it does matter a lot that he stays healthy. And, obviously right now that is of some concern with all of the shots that he's taking. But one of the things that is always so good about having a young guy with talent is that, in theory, he's on the ascent and that he's getting better as the year goes on. And so what you have in the moment could be very different from what you have, a month from now, 2 months from now, et cetera. So, that's what I think we're all hoping for.
Doug, can I throw a question out real quick? Do you mind?
Please.
Hey, Al, so famously, so Doc Walker, actually London Fletcher, after the game, said he was concerned and he considered potentially benching Sam Howell because of his psyche at the end of the game and putting Jacoby Brissett in, basically just to kind of let him hit the reset button, kind of like decompress and move on to next week. Would you ever consider that, or do you think that would have been a bad move?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's unreasonable to think about that, or even to argue that should have happened. I personally was glad to see Sam finish the game.
Me too.
I think, kind of psychologically, it was like him taking ownership of the game, the team saying, no, you're out there. Let's try to get something positive. Let's learn from this. Now, look, he took some more sacks, so it didn't necessarily work out. But, I didn't think that you had to pull him. There's also this, too. When you take a respected veteran backup and you put him in the game, what is a mess of a game, and you say, okay, you deal with this.
Right.
There's an element of like disrespect there.
I can see that. 100%.
We want to protect the guy in front of you. We don't care what happens to you. So you go out there and you deal with this mess. And it's like, I know that the team would not have felt that way, but it can come off that way. So instead, it's kind of like, this is your game. You finish the game. You learn from this, and, we'll move on from this game. And, thankfully, he did not get injured, at least as far as we know. And I was fine with him not getting pulled. Now, again, pulling him would not have been unreasonable, but I was fine with him staying in the game.
I agree with that.
One last one, just because I'm curious what you guys think. At 10-0, I would have kicked the field goal. I'm sure I'm in the minority. Quickly, I'm just curious, Adam, we can start with you. You'd have kicked the field, you'd have gone for it there?
I didn't really have a big issue with them going for it. I had the issue with the third down play. I think that they knew what they were going to do prior to that third down play. And I think that they should have maybe mixed it up on that third down play. And I think it would have been just a higher percentage play on fourth down, maybe if they got a little closer. That would be my only concern with that play, not the fact that they went for it.
Al, I'm assuming the numbers say you go for it on fourth down there.
Yeah, I think you always err on the side of aggression, especially when you're the underdog facing a team that's better than you. But I hear you on what you're saying. And again, I don't think it's crazy. Like, you could have taken the points there. But if you're going to pull off an upset like that, usually it's because you're going to hit on something like, a fourth and goal like that.
Georgia, it felt like they were trying to. The only thing in the game plan from Sunday that I guess I didn't like was it felt like they thought they were going to outshoot Buffalo, where I think maybe I would have preferred to just slow it down, grind it out. And if you can out-thump me on a wet day in Landover, then good on you. This idea that they were going to outscore them in a 30s race just was never going to happen.
Exactly. We're all right. We all study the next level, next gen stats and analytical data. The data says be aggressive attack, right? You're going to leave points on the field if you don't go for that touchdown. But at the same time, if we did slow the ball down, if we did try to have more of a prodding attack against Buffalo, I think that would have been probably better long term, considering the weather conditions. But I can see both sides. So I like what Adam said. I think I'm not upset with it. I'm just upset that it didn't work. Obviously, that's what it comes down to.
It didn't really matter either way. I was just curious what you
That's true.
thought about that. At any rate, George, Adam, we will see you next Monday. And of course, you can catch Al every day during the week. Al at 5 in the morning, right? I mean, ready for your coffee.
Nice and early, yes. When before the sun comes up, we are talking Commanders on the podcast. So thank you.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff.
Love it, Al.
I love it. Always appreciate the time you give us, Al. Thanks.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Okay.